I'm Vicki Hogarth, and I'm one of Canada's local journalism initiative sponsor journalists based here at CHCO Television in St. Andrews by the Sea. I'm joined today by the mayor of our town, Brad Henderson, and Victoria Fenner, who administers the grant from Cactus Media, to find out a little bit more about how this grant works and why it's important to towns like St. Andrews. So Victoria, I'll pass it to you just so you can explain a little bit more about what exactly is the local journalism initiative and how it helps stations like ours and journalists like me to report on civic issues and to do interviews with people like Brad.
Interesting interviews.
Well, I am so happy to be here, and just a little bit of background about me. I work for an organization called the Canadian Association of Community Television Users and Stations, short form for Cactus. When the federal government came up with the idea for the local journalism initiative, what they did was they said, well, obviously they can't administer it directly because these are journalists, and politicians, as we all know, have to have a certain distance. So they approached 6 organizations to administer the funding, and Cactus was asked to administer the funding to distribute to community television stations in Canada. So that's how, so they give us the money, and then we do the selection process, and we also work with the journalists and partners like CHCO. And I live about halfway between Huntsville and North Bay in Ontario, about 3 hours north of Toronto. And it was always my intention. I work from my home office. I got good internet, so it works really well. And that's how I keep in touch with all of you. So, but when we started, COVID hadn't reared its ugly head yet. And so I had always intended to get in my car and visit our partner locations. And finally, I get to do it. So I took a road trip, and CHCO is my first location. So I'm hanging around here and I'm meeting people. I went to town council the other night, all kinds of people. You've introduced me to people, Vicki, and I'm just getting a sense of the town and just what makes it tick. And it's really, really exciting to be here, and I'm having a great time. But what I really want to know from both of you is, like, what has the presence of a full-time local journalist, what difference has it made to this community? And I'd like to turn to you first, Brad. And can you tell us about St. Andrews, and so that people know what kind of a community that we're dealing with it and where you are?
Absolutely. So St. Andrews is a small community located on the southern peninsula of New Brunswick, or just on the coastline of Maine, actually. We have a population in the town itself of 2,000 people. And we're known for a number of different things, but we're primarily known as a tourism community. It's very seasonal driven, a lot of visitors, but we also have marine science research, and education is an important element to our community. So for such a small community, we have so much more. You look at our infrastructure, it's very comparable to a lot of small cities. So it's a busy little community, and I always call it God's country. I'm very blessed to not only live here, but to be the mayor, and I'm really delighted that you could come down and visit us.
And Vicki, can you tell us about CHCO?
Sure. Well, CHCO is based in St. Andrews, but where we serve is all of southwest New Brunswick. And I know that you've probably noticed from being in New Brunswick, there isn't a lot of local media in general, no matter what corner of the province you're in. And this is an independent station. We've been, I think next year is our 30th anniversary. So it's been around since 1993. Yeah. And so we do a lot of focus on civic journalism, things like local town councils that you wouldn't likely see on a bigger station, and programs like Your Town Matters that I just filmed with Mayor Henderson, where we sit down with mayors after town council and find out in layman's terms what happened, what went on, and what should be important for the residents. So we really do try to focus on shows and programming that you wouldn't necessarily see on a more commercial station, but that is important for the people that live in the region. And that doesn't just mean things that are hyper local, though that is one of our main focuses. We also do shows like New Brunswickers Want Action, that has to deal with systemic racism in New Brunswick that you wouldn't likely see a commercial station dedicate a half-hour show to. Maybe a small news clip, but not a full in-depth conversation.
So now this set is a beautiful set. It looks like something you would get in many different kinds of, like many TV stations. But CHCO is a little different. You're not like other TV stations, right?
No, there are 3 of us that work here full time, and that's luckily what the Local Journalism Initiative has helped with my position, is that it funds me full time, but part of my mandate as the Local Journalism Initiative journalist here is to work with our roster of volunteers. And that doesn't just mean finding people in the community to help with programming, it also means forming programs within the school community. So we work a lot with the community schools in St. Andrews. We have a big program that we've started in St. Stephen, and we have a student-produced show called Spartan TV. So we also want to empower that next generation of storytellers to tell their own stories. And I think that's important for a number of reasons. And it also gets seniors involved. A lot of our volunteers worked in television before they retired, and now they have a chance to do that again and bring some vibrancy back into their lives as retired people. But also I think in a time of fake news as being such a strong term, to bring the community into the storytelling process, to make it seem like it's not media and the public, we're one and the same here, that's an anomaly to a lot of people. And so the trust that people have in what we do is really high in this community. And I know local news in general is, because local news is something that if you don't have it in your community, you might be getting your story from, I think of a lot of news that we get in the Maritimes is often anchored in Toronto or Halifax. And if you're in New Brunswick, that's a really huge geographical distance. They might have field reporters that are based in the city centers, but you don't have people in your community. So local news in general, when you have it, you trust it more because you see those reporters in the grocery store. You can call the station and know them, they're your neighbors. But when you add that other layer in, where we have community members in here, the door is open. If you want to be trained to learn how to use a camera or be a host, that is an open possibility here, and we will work with you as the senior staff here to make sure that you have training that also follows. We have a broadcasting license, so we very much follow proper media ethics. So you will learn how to do journalism properly here, but you can be totally included in the process no matter what your interests are.
And you do all this with 3 paid people, and one of them would not exist without the funding for the Local Journalism Initiative. That's remarkable.
Exactly.
And a lot of work. I've seen how hard you work all week, and I think the output of the station is really, really amazing, considering that it's not a big organization at all. What I'd like to do now is turn to Brad and just ask, what difference has it made to the town that the station exists, and also that there is a Local Journalism Initiative journalist who is paid by the federal government through us to be able to work here and serve the town?
Absolutely. It's a tough question because there's so many different layers to that of what it means. I guess as far as the paid position, the difference that I've seen on the outside is that it took a community initiative, but it took it to the next level. They had more support. It's amazing to think of how many different places I go to and different events, and they're doing it in a couple neighboring communities plus St. Andrews. The amount of ground that this local TV station covers is just amazing. And not only are they there, they have to edit it, they have to produce it. It's truly remarkable. But what it does for the community, I could talk pre-pandemic, and I can also talk during the pandemic.
Please do both.
Yeah, so pre-pandemic, it was a great way for me and myself as a member of town council to be completely honest with you, more transparent, more visible, and to get the messages out of things that we're working on. We're having important conversations about tax dollars, and there was times when we wouldn't have a single reporter in the room, and when we start partnering with CHCO Television, it was a way for people to know what their council was talking about. But as far as like community events and celebrating and talking about challenges, I'm not to say that we don't have other media partners that come, but to be consistently here and to really understand the issues that are important in the community, they need to be your neighbor. And these are people that are not just there to report it, they're people that are there to celebrate in your community with you. They're you. And I can't always say that that's always the case with people that come from outside of the community. They understand the issues that are important. But during the pandemic, I think it took the importance of local television to a whole new level. I think at that point it almost transformed our local radio station into, I would say, almost a provincial one, if not a maritime one, because myself, whenever we got the updates that were going on through the province, my main source of information was my own community television right here in St. Andrews. And when I had a question as mayor that I wasn't getting answered, there was times where Vicki and I would be on the phone and I'd be asking her at the next press conference, can you ask this question? And she had a lot of people pulling, because there's businesses, there's individuals, there's people that had loved ones outside, there's people that had places here like summer homes and they were wondering if they could get here. I think that indirectly CHCO almost became the province's source for cascading information, because everybody was reaching out to there. And then there was a lot of events that were canceled that we couldn't do. CHCO helped us do them virtually, put them online, so people that were at home didn't feel so alone, because they could still see. I'll give an example. We do a tree lighting at Christmas time. We couldn't have people gather. We basically did an interview, did the tree lighting on CHCO. People could watch it in the safety of their own home. Those are things that we wouldn't have had without CHCO television. So we are extremely blessed. I do look at it bigger than our community. The fact that there's so few of them, other communities are looking at this as a best practice and a model that we need to get in more communities. And they're trying to leverage some of the asset that we have in this community. And I think that it's a good thing. The more people and the more communities that realize the benefits of local television, the better off that we are. And I'm proud that the town of St. Andrews has a partnership, because this particular studio is located in the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex. This is a town-owned building. This building serves a lot of different purposes, and I think a very important use of this building is CHCO television.
You know, just thinking a little broader, this is broader than the LJI, but what, as the citizen of the town, then how would you like to see this organization grow? What kinds of things would you like to see it do beyond what it's doing right now if the resources were available?
Well, that's it. I think the thing that is actually holding back our community television is the resources, and we're talking financial. You know, if you look at things like high definition and different things that are required, I don't want to say it's pieced together with the technology that they have, but it's literally coming from other places that no longer needs the equipment because they've got newer stuff. And to think that community television, for my particular community, it's the #1 news source, and to think that they're just getting by with people's leftovers, that doesn't feel right. Like they're getting held by. If they had more reporters, they could do even more, right? But the reality is it's a 3-person team, and I still don't know how they do what they do, but the resources that they have, and of course they're unfortunately waiting budget to budget, decision by decision to find out, is there funding here today? Is it going to be there tomorrow? Mm-hmm. There's no consistency for them. And again, I'm on the outside. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but resources is holding back the growth, because I can't imagine the amount of calls they're getting and they just can't cover it because they don't have the proper resources to do everything as amazing of a job they're doing.
Mm-hmm. And what about the role of volunteers here? How important is it that the station involves volunteers instead of having a model where, for example, okay, if we had enough money to hire 7 people, then we could do it all ourselves. Mm-hmm. Do you have a sense of how that would change the station?
It would. I think that volunteers will always be part of the station. I think it's a part of their DNA. I think that the people that volunteer here, they're almost a social network, but the thing is, it's not a clique. Anyone that wants to come in here and volunteer, they certainly can, but they've also reached out beside those volunteers, and I know that they do a lot with the school system, mm-hmm. But also there's people that have unique and special abilities in our community. Sometimes the school system might not be the best means. It's an academic school, but it's a way to get them into something else that isn't available through our school system. I know Spartan Television and St. Stephen's taking off. It is the I guess you could say younger sister of CHCO. It's part of the whole network, and to get more people into journalism and things like that in a small community like St. Andrews. Mm-hmm. We don't have enough students to diversify our programming enough at our high school. This is the way that they get that exposure. So there's so many different levels to the importance of what CHCO is. And one more thing to add is we actually have a telethon every year. A group was doing a radiothon. They decided it was time that they couldn't do it. It provides Christmas to children in our region that unfortunately don't have the ability to have one. We do a telethon here on CHCO television, and every year we sponsor over 300 children in the region from a telethon on our local community station. We provide Christmas because of the work that Patrick and Vicki and the team do here. So I could go on, I could tell you 15 other stories about the importance, what it means, but it's volunteers are the heart, and it is of our community too, but CHCO is certainly volunteer driven.
And that's where I would say, just to add to that, that's where someone can really cut their teeth and see if they love it. I look to the Spartans, Ian Curran, who has been our summer student last year. He will be again this year. He's got a full scholarship to study journalism last year, and he's got a lot of his work here to put on his resume to get that scholarship. But when you have volunteers that are local, sometimes it is hard in a more rural community. Oftentimes when someone is, I won't name a certain station, but a commercial station that might hire someone from away that comes here, maybe they're here for a couple years, they leave again. You often, to get someone to serve somewhere that's more remote, need to get someone to care who's from there, who really wants to tell the stories of the place they care about, because if someone's in for 2 years and out again, who do you replace them with? And that can be the struggle that you see happening across Canada with other media outlets, is sometimes there's bigger stations in New Brunswick that I see are struggling just to have a roster of journalists to cover this area, because they can't necessarily find those homegrown people to tell the stories of a community that they care about. And I think that it would be important to stress too, volunteers, we don't have funding in the way that I think people think that we're similar to CBC. We don't have that coming into the station. So our main funder outside of this local journalism initiative is TV Bingo. So
Which I spun the wheel last night. It was like, it's so much fun, but yet at the same time, that's a really, that's not, it must not give you that much confidence to realize that, people, bingo revenues come up, they go up and they go down, and it's not very stable, right?
There's no guarantee that bingo will always have a dedicated, and what we do like about it is that it's $7 a card. You're not asking people to spend more than that. You could only play so many cards, so we're not even doing any form of asking for money that would be beyond what we think people could offer once a week, but we do have to basically ask people to support us through bingo. So we don't have that guaranteed funding coming in that would necessarily say, even the 3 people that work here definitely have a job guaranteed for next year. It really, that is a huge factor in whether we succeed or not.
Right. Well, there are a number of stations, radio and TV, community stations that are supported by bingo, and it's really great that that's there as a resource, but there has to be more stable funding for sure, and that's one thing that we at Cactus are constantly working towards, is building the case for community media in Canada. But I just want to wrap up with one question, which is a big can of worms that could be a subject in itself, and actually I've got an idea. We do professional development seminars on Zoom for the reporters who are participating in the journalists who are participating in our program across the country. And one thing we're always talking about is, how do you cover politics in a small town, and if the journalist has to be accessible, open, but critical at the same time, you have to develop good relationships with each other, but it's her job to ask the hard questions. How do you navigate that territory?
How do you navigate being fair?
Well, it's like, how do you cover city council in a way where you're bringing out the issues that need to be discussed, and yet you as a politician have certain things that, you have a certain point of view. So how do you navigate that territory, considering that you see each other practically every day, and, there isn't that distance sometimes in small towns that you might get in a larger media organization in a bigger city, for example?
I can answer that.
Yep.
For me, and there is times, there's always those issues that 50% of the public thinks one way and 50% thinks the other. It's controversy. Probably for TV, it's spice. But I actually appreciate it simply for the fact that even if a group of citizens or even the reporter sees it the other way, at least it's a median for me to actually explain the decision-making process and why we came to that decision. It actually helps more than it hurts. And sometimes it can be constructive criticism of the fact where, did you think of doing this? Absolutely, but I don't want to always be narrow-minded to think exactly every decision that I'm going to make over the course of a term on council is going to be the right decision. That's probably politically not the right thing to say, but guess what? Everybody makes mistakes, and sometimes it could be coming from the media to let you know that that's not what the public wants you to do, and it helps. To be honest, it's a way to reflect. The story goes out on CHCO. I can look at the Facebook comments and get some great ideas. So, and the other thing at the end of the day is it's not personal. I'm doing the best job I can do to be a mayor. And in this case, Vicki is doing the best job she could be a reporter. And whether we see eye to eye on an issue or not, at the end of the day, is it when the tape stops rolling, it's over. Like we're on to the next thing. So I'm very lucky that we have such an open conversation where Vicki and Patrick would actually pick up the phone and say, "Hey, you're doing this. Did you think of that?" Because it's such a small community, we can talk to our residents, and that's a real big benefit.
Right. Patrick is the station manager, by
Thank
the way.
you,
I should point that
it's
out.
so small town,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
just
right.
like,
So Vicki, how do you then be the tough guy and the tough person, but yet at the same time supportive of your community at the same time? And
I
you
think
have a
that's
lot
just
of
it.
personal
We are, because we're
relationships.
both based here, we care about the community, and because we're both based here, we are both held accountable in the grocery store. So not only do we have that gavel to gavel coverage of town council, which that's what we invite the viewers to watch on their own. Make up your mind. I'm not just going to give you a 2-minute news story where I picked the clips. He's going to come sit down and talk for half an hour, and you can hold us both to that when you see us in the grocery store. If people think my questions aren't fair or they're too weak, they're not strong enough, I have to ask the questions of the viewers, and they know me and they know Brad. So really, our relationship doesn't matter if we're friends or not, because we're really responsible to the public, and the public knows who we are. They don't feel that we're reporting on something from a different community, and I'm not coming in from elsewhere reporting on St. Andrews. So yeah, there's definitely a level of responsibility to the public that I think is first and foremost in both of our minds. So I mean, whether it makes Brad uncomfortable because I have to ask a question, he knows I have to ask it. And
people want her to cover the controversy. They don't want the things that are 6-0 votes. They don't want the things that are minor. They want to know what the thought process was, what caused a debate over this, where did council not see eye to eye on. I'll say, I can honestly say, I don't know if everyone could say that with local television. I find like I've always got a fair shake. Doesn't mean there hasn't been times where there's been subject matters I might not necessarily want to talk about, but if I'm in this seat, I had a boss that once told me that you should live every day like it's on the front page of tomorrow's paper. That's what I'm doing with CHCO, and I'm very pleased that we can do it.
Okay, well, this is such a meaty topic, and as we've been talking, I've been thinking maybe we should get a Zoom panel discussion going with some of the mayors and elected officials from some of our communities with our journalists, and really flesh out this topic, because it's like different communities have different characters, and I'd love to do that sometimes.
One
Thanks
more
for
thing
the
to
idea.
add to that is that I think when you're a community-based TV station, the thing that I don't stress enough is that we're not for profit. So I'm not going to try to do something that's sensational. Doesn't mean I can't ask a hard question. And we have been even told by the Public Health Office of New Brunswick that they appreciated our hard questions, but that we asked them in a respectful way. And I think that that's key to when you're doing something that isn't about the headline, because we can. I know what the public wants to know about, and it definitely is issues that they find, that might be polarizing issues. But you can still address them in a way that doesn't offend someone, and isn't rude just for the sake of something spicy. It can still be a topic that is definitely the heated.
And not to add too much onto this, but the other thing that it's important to is not just the municipal government, it's all levels of government. And there's been issues that as a little community, we're having a harder time having a bigger voice. And neighboring communities, there's a community that's trying to get access to a year-round ferry. They're Canadian residents that have to
Campobello,
travel through
we've
the
heard
United
about
States.
that,
Campobello.
yes.
CHCO is probably the biggest way, next to our MP, that they've had a voice. And they ask the tough questions, and thankfully they do, because if they're not asking them, I can't necessarily say on a consistent matter, anyone else will.
Well, I really have appreciated the opportunity to sit here and talk to you, and also to get to know your community, and to be here I arrived on Sunday and I'm leaving on Saturday morning, so almost a week here. And I thank you all for your hospitality, and Vicki, I thank you and Patrick for really, really good work consistently since the beginning of the program when you started it was January of 2020, I believe.
I measure it all by the pandemic because it started right before COVID started.
So anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to get to know your town. And is there anything else you'd like to say to the camera? This is it's going to be posted on the Cactus website under the local journalism initiative impact section so that people can see. So
We should
what
talk
is
about
this
your
program
St. Andrews
doing?
earrings. I just noticed them.
Yes, I
With
have
the whale tails.
Yes, I got whale
Zoom in on
tails
those,
the other
Patrick.
day.
Zoom in on those.
Okay.
You are a local. Yeah.
And thank you for including me as a local. I appreciate it, and I appreciate this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And yeah, I'll just end by saying this program hit at a time that I don't think we could in some ways have picked better, with the Local Journalism Initiative grant coming right before COVID-19, and it gave us that opportunity to pivot. I think when a lot of everywhere in the world felt the importance of news, but in a community like St. Andrews and all of Charlotte County that doesn't have a lot of their own local coverage, it gave us the opportunity to show what we can do. But if it wasn't for the Local Journalism Initiative, we wouldn't have had that chance. So,
which I should put the plug on the end to, is funded by the Government of Canada through the Department of Canadian Heritage.
Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to learn more about the Local Journalism Initiative and how it might apply to your station or your community, go to cactusmedia.ca.